Good afternoon. Welcome to Rotary. Bill Bowling will lead us in the Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance, followed by David Duke with a special solo of our national anthem on the saxophone. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. I first want to just say I wanted to thank Milton Little from United Way, one of our members. I don't know if Milton's here today, and Kyle Wade from the Atlanta Community Food Bank. They both were invited to write op-eds in the AJC yesterday, and I just want to thank them and their teams and their partners for the work they do. I mean, it was so much a part of our Thanksgiving. So if you would just take this moment and get yourself in a prayerful position. Dear God, thank you once again for the opportunity to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday, a time to remember and give thanks for the love, harmony, and beauty that is, in the best sense, connects us all as humans. Thank you for the opportunity to celebrate Hanukkah, the Jewish festival of lights, a time of rededication that we can once again have the opportunity to rededicate our own lives to being our best selves. Thank you for the recent Diwali remembrance, celebrated around the world by Jains, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Hindus. A celebration of light by putting a light outside one's home to symbolize the inner light that protects us from spiritual darkness. Help us to remember to rededicate ourselves, to create a temple in our own hearts as a sacred place to give thanks and honor to you, dear God. Help us to continue to nurture the inner light that gives us strength when there seems to be darkness, fear, or uncertainty pervading many aspects of our lives. And please help this Rotary Club to be a steady light of those who have committed themselves toward a better life for everyone. Dear God, give us strength when we feel weak or confused. Give us a compassionate heart when we feel slighted or misunderstood. Give us a thankful heart, even when our future is uncertain. Dear God, help us to remember that as Rotarians, we gather around our four truths to be of service to others. We are not a business group trying to make a deal or a political group trying to win a policy debate or even a social group just to gather around a meal and a speech. But we are a group of servant leaders, sacred beings in your eyes, trying to use our influence not for ourselves, but to make things better for our community and the world. I want to thank you for our speaker today, Alex Taylor, and Cox Enterprises, as they strive to be innovative and to be a reflection of the values they live by as a company. And finally, I want to give thanks for the opportunity that each of us in this room to choose our political leaders by voting. We realize not all people have that opportunity, and it's not guaranteed that we will always have it. So we know, you know, if we voted and took our turn to strengthen our democracy. We ask this in your loving name. Amen. Let's say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You're on.
This is, of course, supposed to be an old bar tune that they got and put to those wonderful words from the War of 1812. but it's also beautiful music all by itself.
That was fantastic. David, thank you so much, and thank you, Bill. Enjoy your lunch. We'll be right back. Good afternoon, everyone. We have a terrific program planned for today. Following our announcements, we are pleased to share a club update on membership and some of our member engagement initiatives. And then it's on to our featured program with Alex Taylor, CEO of Cox Enterprises. We have a huge number of guests today, I think over 20, and while I would like to recognize everybody's names, I think in the interest of our full program, if all of you who are guests today could please stand up now so that we can welcome you. Thank you. It's great to have you all with us. One quick reminder, registration is now open for our December 20th Rotarian Daughter Day. This is always such a favorite of the club. Please bring your daughters, granddaughters, nieces, and even if you don't have a daughter, you're still welcome to attend. We're honored to have with us Roz Brewer, CEO of the Walgreens Boots Alliance, and this will be just a great way to celebrate the holidays. So please go ahead and sign up early to hold your spot. As you know, each month I like to recognize our birthday celebrants, and recently we've had two that are just so special they deserve their own unique recognition. 45 years ago, both Howell Adams and Manning Patillo joined Rotary. They are two giants of our club and beloved by all of us. I'm thrilled to announce that Manning Patillo just celebrated his 102nd birthday on October 11th. He has been quoted as saying that the secret to a long life is staying active, and he is certainly the embodiment of that philosophy. And I'm also thrilled to share that Howell Adams recently celebrated his 90th birthday. Howell's energy and kind spirit are absolutely infectious, and he really sets the pace for all of us each week. So again, let's please have a warm round of applause for our two very special birthdays. Jenna Kelly will now introduce new member Douglas Lindsey.
Right. Hi, everybody. On behalf of my co-sponsors Ernest Greer and John O'Neill, I'm pleased to introduce you to our new member, Douglas Lindsey. Douglas is CEO of the Aaron's Company, which is a publicly traded omni-channel provider of lease-to-own solutions for furniture, home appliance, consumer electronics, and accessories. Douglas has led Aaron's as CEO since its spinoff in July of 2020. It is fitting that we are introducing Douglas here today in the Loudermilk Center, as Aaron's was founded 66 years ago by Charles Loudermilk Sr. Douglas has deep roots in Atlanta, having grown up here. He graduated from the Lovett School, where he met his lovely wife, Sarah. In fact, Douglas's father-in-law was a Rotarian in Sandy Springs. Douglas's dad was from Switzerland and came to the U.S. to get his MBA from the University of Virginia. His mom is from Greensboro, North Carolina, and raised him a proper Tar Heel fan, something that we have in common. Douglas was actually born in Charlottesville, Virginia, but moved to Atlanta when he was young. His dad owned multiple businesses here, including pharmacies, which is where Douglas got his first multi-unit retail experience. After graduating Lovett, Douglas attended W&L and got a degree in business administration and accounting. He also received his MBA from the Cox School of Business at SMU. He spent a number of years with Regis as VP of Finance, as well as with Ace Cash Express as their Chief Operating Officer, before he was recruited to Aaron's and back to Atlanta from fellow W&L alum John Robinson. He and his family returned to Atlanta in 2016, and he assumed the role of president of Aaron's business segment. Now, as the CEO of the newly independent public company, Douglas is leading the rebranding and repositioning of the company for long-term success. His leadership extends to the community as well through a national partnership with Aaron's and the Boys and Girls Club of America, supporting veterans who are battling post-traumatic stress syndrome and other mental health issues, as well as furnishing homes for single parents, first-time homeowners. Douglas and Sarah have 2 children. Margaret is a sophomore at Trinity in Hartford, Connecticut, and Alex is a senior at Lovett. Please join me in welcoming Douglas to the Atlanta Rotary.
Douglas, I knew I liked you, and now I know you are a fellow Tar Heel, so welcome. You are now officially a member of the world's greatest Rotary Club. We are excited to get to know you better and can't wait to get you involved in all the wonderful things that we're doing. So welcome to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, and just a reminder, Douglas, as is our new tradition, Douglas will be down front after the program, so please do stop by and welcome him officially. So tomorrow marks the end of the 4th month since the reopening of our club. This has been an unusual year. I feel like sometimes we have our foot firmly on the gas pedal, and at the same time we have the other foot on the COVID brake, as we constantly are monitoring the health and safety of our club members as our utmost responsibility. We have resumed our weekly programs thanks to our program co-chairs, David Rubinger, Bill Hennigan, and their wonderful program committee. We've had such a great array of speakers from Senator Raphael Warnock, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, Chris Womack, and others. And then now today with Alex Taylor, Secretary of State Raffensperger on Monday, and Roz Brewer around the corner. There is just such an incredible drumbeat of amazing speakers and so many great opportunities for each of you to get informed every week at Rotary. This year, we've also launched some new initiatives. We're going to talk some more about that shortly. Launching our Rotary on the Road at Mercedes-Benz, our Rotary Roundtable Series, our Diplomat Dinners, our next one coming up on December the 2nd with Jim Reed. It's been such a wonderful start to the year, and I'm so appreciative of all of you and your engagement in this club. All of this has led to what I'm pleased to announce as our accolade as the 5th largest Rotary Club literally in the world. This is a new spot for us. We were 6, now we're number 5. And this accolade, by the way, this will not prevent us from continuing to claim that we are still the world's greatest Rotary Club. This accolade is in no small part due to the incredible presidents who've gone before me, Cannon Carr, Dave Moody, and a string of membership chairs, Adrian Cronier, Helene Lawless, and now Randall Kirsch, who collectively have recruited 60 new members all throughout COVID. So this was when we were shut down, virtual, not meeting, partially meeting, ramping up, 60 new members. It's an incredible testament to the leadership of those officers, and I'm so grateful to have a chance to work with so many of those people. On that theme, we're going to spend some time today highlighting two of our officers, Randall Kirsch, our head of membership, and Billy Levine, our vice president of club service. They're going to talk a little bit about the work of their committees in membership and club engagement. But before I turn to them, I wanted to ask your indulgence in one thing. In the Episcopal Church, there's a tradition that I've always been a fan of. It's called passing the peace. And I would like to ask if all or any of those new members who have joined during COVID over that time period could please stand up first, especially any of you with a new member badge, which is the red badge, Douglas, for example. There we go. And then if I could ask that the rest of you could please stand up, don your mask, I have to say, and if you could just turn for a moment to someone that you don't know, and especially any of those new members, and introduce yourself and extend your peace to them, just for a moment. Kathleen, you too. Thank you so much. I hope that will be the beginning of your doing that every time you come to Rotary, and it's so important that we all continue to get to know one another, and particularly to welcome those new members who may have joined us at a very special time when we weren't even meeting. I will now turn it over to Randall, and then following Randall, you'll hear from Billy.
All right, hey everybody. It's great to see all the guests in the house today, so appreciate you guys being here. And thank you, President Catherine, for the opportunity to do a quick report update from the trenches of the membership committee. And as you'll see through the course of the next 3 or 4 minutes, membership in this club is the engine of this club. It is what makes us who we are, literally and figuratively. And it's a shared responsibility, not just of the committee, not just of the board, but really everyone in this room. So thank you in advance for that, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a second. And so Joel, if we can go to the first slide. One of the first things we want to set out for ourselves this year so we could be very intentional and strategic about our membership approach is sort of a mission statement for our committee. And if you've heard me give this talk at the new member orientation, this really operates on 2 parallel courses. One is about exclusivity, fiercely protecting our reputation as a club of being the premier business and civic club in the city, full of top decision makers in very influential organizations, right, who are making major impacts inside and outside the walls of their organization. But we owe it to ourselves and to this community to better represent that community, and so that's where we bring ourselves to inclusivity, and we've got to do a better job. And this is not an indictment, it's just a fact. I think we can all agree with this. We've got to do a better job of diversifying the club membership. So I'll show you some data on where we stand now, talk a little bit about where we're going. So let's go to the next slide there, Joel. Left side of your screen is just sort of our funnel, our process to get to be a member. There's a lot of hurdles in there. That's a good thing. That's what sort of protects our reputation and the status that we share as a club. Getting people into the top of that funnel is the job of everyone in this room. David Edson leads our subcommittee on leadership ID, and they are proactively going out and seeking names and making lists of people that we would be remiss not to invite into this club at the right time. But the vast majority of people who get into this club come from you, come from everyone in this room. So as I'm talking, I want you to be thinking about people in your network who meet the criteria, wildly successful in their careers, making an impact outside of the walls of their organizations, influential leaders in everything that they touch, and they really belong in this room, right? On the right side is really what we're trying to do this year, and if we're taking up a lot of time from a lot of busy people in membership committees, so efficiency was sort of a watchword for us this year, is try to strip out as much friction of the process as we could. And so we have this pretty simple set of things. We won't get into details today at each of those stages to try to make everything operate better. Here's the good news. It's working. I'll show you some stats in a second. Per custom, the membership committee sort of owes the club 40 new members, ideally. Very hard during COVID. Ideally, 40 plus new members a year. So we made that our goal. I'd love to significantly exceed it with your help. At the same time, you probably predicted this by now, we want to set some data-driven goals around female representation in the club and in terms of people of color in the club. This is a white male-dominated club for lots of reasons we don't need to get into. It just is. 18.2% is where we started the year. Rotary International is 23% women. Still not real high, but significantly higher than where we are. And we want to make progress there to 21%. That means almost half of the 40 new members have to be women to move the needle just that 2.8 points. That's how big of a lift this is, okay? And the same thing's going to be true when we talk about race and ethnicity. We've been dealing with some pretty low fidelity data in terms of club ethnicity around white and non-white, and we want to make that a lot higher fidelity, but it is what it is right now, and we want to set some data-driven goals around that. We'll go to the next slide. Quick status report. This is through October, so the first 4 months of this fiscal year, we've brought in 21 new members, so over halfway to our goal in just a third of the period, so very excited about that. Really owe a lot of debt of thanks to our entire membership committee for their hard work, for all of the sponsors and co-sponsors who've been a part of this. Just thank you so much for making that possible, and you guys can help keep this momentum going. 8 of those, 38%, have been female, and 43% have been people of color. We're not on track to hit the goals I just showed you. That's still really good. By historical standards for this club, that's good, and we're making progress, so we need to keep going, okay? We're treading water a little bit, so we lost 18 members during that same 4 months. So 21 up, 18 down. You know, we're net 3. We want to do better than that. So if we can keep people engaged, which Billy's going to talk about next, that keeps that attrition number manageable, and we add really highly qualified new members to the club, and we're going to be a better club for it. Next slide. Here's where we stand now. And in both pictures, gender on the left, race on the right. Race, all we have in the legacy data is Caucasian, non-Caucasian. It's not good enough for 2021, but it's what we have, okay? We have some ideas about how to get to a much higher fidelity picture of our club in terms of race and ethnicity with your help, and we'll entertain those later. But we're about an 80-20 club on both metrics. And so that's what we're trying to move the needle on. We'll go to the next slide. Let's look at for-profit versus not-for-profit, something that's been always sort of hotly debated over the years, and a bylaws change over the past 12 months, where we changed from capping the number of nonprofits, period, to capping the number of nonprofits that are primarily donor-funded, and sort of call it grant-seeking versus grant-making nonprofits, if that's helpful. About a quarter of the club is nonprofit, technically nonprofit, but really only half of that number, 12% of the club, is primarily donor-funded. We have a 15% cap as of those new bylaws changes, so we're well under that. But point is, it's just another important data point, another metric to manage against, to be the kind of club we want to be, okay? Last couple slides here. So these are the 3 questions we're always trying to answer in committee and even in board to decide whether someone is qualified to become a member of this club. And this is, again, I want to have you guys thinking about this in your network right now. See if you can come up with a name. Literally write it down right now if you can. Why this person? Are they the top decision maker in their organizations or one of the very top decision makers in their organization? Is their organization, why this organization? Is their organization influential in their line of business? And then why now, which is a judgment call that you can make. It's a judgment call the membership committee is asked to make. It's a judgment call the board is asked to make. It's really, really important. But you want to be able to answer strong and affirmative in all 3 of those parts of the Venn diagram, and that's going to be the perfect member candidate who has a very high likelihood of getting to this club. On the right, it's an eye chart. You're not going to see it. Right now, if this gets circulated, I'd like for you to look at it. The yellow ones are LOBs, lines of business where we're already overrepresented, so be thinking in some of the other ones if you can. And then last slide, I'd like for you to just give a round of applause to my membership committee who's doing an absolutely fabulous job, and appreciate all that they've done for the club, and then we'll hand it over to Billy.
Thank you, Randall, and thank you, Catherine, also. I am your Vice President of Club Service, or better said, Club Engagement. When Catherine asked me to serve in this role this year, she and I were thinking about what were important ways to, in essence, get re-engaged with the club. After a year of COVID, after a year of not having meetings in person, what did we need to do? So I put together a list of the top ways to get involved in Rotary. First of all, come to a meeting. Congratulations, you're here, you did it. And, I've seen a number of new faces today of people I haven't seen in a while. Points for honesty. Raise your hand if this is your first meeting of 2021. A couple of hands going up. Thank you very much for being here. And for those of you who haven't been in a while, remember, please sign in. So you have this at your table. You can take your phone right now. You're allowed to take it out. And please make sure that you click the QR code so that we can track who's here. If you ask, are we taking attendance? What I'll tell you is we're tracking attendance. So please make sure to do that. You can either do it out front or send an email to Abby or to Gina, and we can track attendance for our members. Next, for those of you who've been greeters and been working the badge board and been working the front desk, thank you very much. Another show of hands. Anybody here who's been on the hospitality committee and served in that role recently? Great. Can I get a show of hands of everybody who is in the Rotary Club here today? That's everybody. Guess what? You're all on the hospitality committee. We have this commitment to make fellowship an important part of our club, to be welcoming. Being part of the hospitality committee is part of those duties. Holly Swig is the administrative assistant for Lauren Kuntz. When I called Lauren and asked her to serve as a hospitality chair, she said that she would only do it if Holly agreed, and Holly did. And so thank you. Holly's here and Lauren is here. Thank you very, very much. As we are returning to normal, as we are getting back into our regular meetings, having the hospitality committee help our meetings run smoothly is critically important. We'll be reaching out to everybody and asking, telling you that you will be assigned a role as a greeter or the badge board or the front desk. If you can't make it, please find someone else to fill your spot. Please don't just send an email and say, sorry, can't be there, because that's our collective responsibility to make sure that our club runs smoothly. So congratulations, you're all on the hospitality committee. You can check that box. Next, on the topic of committees, Randall mentioned the membership committee, and thank you very much to everybody who is serving in that important role. We also have our program committee, and thank you to Bill and to David Rubinger who are leading that. And we also have our club service committee. If you aren't on a committee or haven't been engaged, we are meeting. We are having committee meetings, and it is important for us to make sure the running of the club goes smoothly. So please re-engage in those committees themselves. Next slide, please. We have a number of incredible upcoming meetings that are coming up. Most of the ones that are on your slide right now are ones that are special meetings. We have our Rotarian Daughter meeting with Roz Brewer on December the 20th. We have another Rotary on the Road. We actually put this in place thinking that maybe the Loudermilk Center wasn't ready to accommodate us. We got such a great response from Mercedes-Benz Stadium that we are doing it again. And we've been invited by Norfolk Southern to come view their new headquarters. Thank you, Bob Hope, for reaching out. Where's Bob? I saw him. Thank you, Bob, for reaching out and bringing that to fruition. That's going to be April the 4th. Plenty of information on where to go and how to get there, but we appreciate the opportunity to kind of take Rotary on the road. And by the way, if you knew from way back when, Rotary used to rotate where you went to meet with fellow business leaders at their places of business, so it would only be natural for us to take Rotary on the road. We have decided not to have a holiday party this year. I know some folks were a little disappointed about that. We are stoked in tradition here. But at the same time, we are going to replace that with a spring cocktail meeting at the Botanical Gardens. Members of our club or members of the Botanical Gardens, we're going to be using our cultural centers around Atlanta to boost engagement. So be aware of that on your calendar for May the 9th. And then also, we are scheduling an old timers gathering. For those of you who don't know, old timers are those who have been in the club for at least 20 years, you can do your own math, or are age 70 and have been in the club for at least 5 years. I think we have something like 162 old timers who qualify under those criteria. We are going to schedule an old timers meeting, and it should be a dinner with cocktails coming up sometime in the first half of 2022. Next slide. So what can we do to make sure that we are creating a welcoming experience here at Rotary? You guys are here today, and thank you for doing that. If everyone here could call a fellow Rotarian and make a schedule or a plan to bring them to lunch, it would enhance our experience here. We can fit more people. We can comfortably fit in COVID protocols. So reach out to our fellow Rotarians who you're looking around and say, hey, I hadn't seen you in a while. I had the opportunity to do that not too long ago. We've got some great programs coming up. Make sure that we are including our fellow Rotarians and tell them we are back to regular meetings. Also, make a specific effort to meet and sit with a new member. I think Catherine got us off to a great start. When you're around the front of our Loudermilk Center on a Monday and you see somebody with a red badge, make an effort to sit with them, introduce yourself to them, get to know them a little bit, because I think it's really important that we are not only the world's greatest Rotary Club, but the world's most welcoming Rotary Club as well. And then as Randall mentioned, please recommend a new member and serve as their sponsor. It's a great way to get involved. It's a great way to continue the vitality of our club. Next slide. Last, we are going to have a couple of initiatives. The diplomats dinners is one of them, and also small group dinners of ways for folks who haven't been engaged in meetings to get re-engaged and kind of ease their way back into Rotary. So look out for more details on those as well. We think they're great new ideas to help our engagement. Also, we have a Georgia Rotary student participant here. Sagar is with us. You can host Sagar to your place of business. I had Sagar come over for Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and it was great for him, someone who's from Australia, to experience a traditional, American Thanksgiving. Host a GRSP student would be a great way to get involved. And then last, Catherine, in her initiatives at the very beginning of the year, set up one of the first initiatives was to help this club create a more engaging membership experience. We can't do that without your help. If you've got something that you're thinking about that you think would be something that we should try, in this era of COVID and post-COVID, anything is possible. So let's try it. Bring us some ideas and let's see what works. And out of it, we may get some great new traditions. So we hope that you find Rotary engaging and re-engaging. We appreciate your being here. Make sure that you sign in because we're tracking attendance. And thank you so much for your commitment to Rotary.
Thank you so much, Billy and Randall. You can see why they are the perfect people to be heading up these two areas. Really appreciate your leadership as officers. And you will hear from other officers with some future spotlights as well in the year ahead. I am now honored to introduce fellow Rotarian Kevin Reilly, editor of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Under Kevin's leadership, the AJC has been acclaimed for exceptional investigative journalism, winning 2 Emmys, and also a coveted spot as a Pulitzer Prize finalist. Kevin is nationally recognized as an authority on local journalism, and he has a terrific perspective on today's speaker as a longtime employee of Cox Enterprises. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Reilly.
Well, I'm going to be interviewing my boss, and I just found out I'll be introducing him. So, without any notes at all. So, We're going to talk about a lot of stuff that I won't bore you with in the introduction, but let me just put it this way. I'll tell you a little story. Back in about 2009, I was on vacation with my family on Sanibel Island, Florida. And my boss at the Dayton Daily News in Ohio called me. And he said, "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you on vacation, but this is kind of a big deal." And I thought, uh-oh. And he told me that a member of the Cox family was going to be coming to Dayton to run our operations there. We had a TV station, a radio station, and actually about 12 newspapers at the time, Alex. And he wanted to let me know that, you know. So I immediately called some friends around the business and said, "Hey, you know of any good jobs out there that I might that I might need to get?" But all kidding aside, I got to work with Alex for a couple years in Ohio, and our big project there was to put all these media properties together in one building. And then after a while, he took me out for a beer one night at Moraine Country Club, one of the country clubs in Dayton that his great-grandfather founded. And he said to me, "What would you think about being the editor in Atlanta?" To which I responded, "What?" And so that's how I ended up here, and he and I worked closely ever since then. As he's come back from Dayton, worked around our company. We're going to talk a little bit about all of that. But he has always been a fantastic supporter of me, even at the most difficult times. And at times this job can be a little rough, and I don't just mean when I come to these meetings and someone gets on me. I mean sometimes we're dealing with some hard stuff. So Alex, why don't you come on up? We'll talk for a while, and the really interesting stuff will come out in the Q&A. Okay, so you probably know this, but the Cox public relations folks sent me a bunch of questions about what you wanted to talk about.
I think she's our guest today. I tried intentionally to not prepare because I like to answer just honestly and.
Oh, all right, good, because we might not get to those.
Okay.
One of the questions I get a lot, so I'm going to go toward this before we get into some bigger things, is about the family. You know, people will say, "Is like, hey, Alex, we know him, but where is he in the Cox family?" And that. So, take a moment and. I don't know quite how to put this question, but explain your place in the family, where the family is, the beginnings of all of that.
I never really know where I stand in the family, but as far as the Cox business side of the business, it was founded by my great-grandfather, who was a governor of Ohio and a longtime newspaper person from Dayton, Ohio, and he had 3 children. His first child was James Cox Jr., who later succeeded him as chairman of the company. And then he had 2 daughters 20 years later. So mysteries of family business, like every family has, don't ask any questions, but so his 2 daughters came 20 years later, and that was Ann Chambers and Barbara Cox Anthony, and they were sisters, and I'm the grandson of Ann, who lived here in Atlanta a long time.
Okay, all right.
Since 1939.
And one of the remarkable things about the company, and I know that you have talked about this, is for it to be in the hands of a privately held company to be in the hands of a 4th generation. So you know how those odds are stacked against you. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think it's less than 1%. Make it through multiple generations, wholly owned, and actually in governance and control. There's the Mars family is an example of another, but there are other family businesses like the Koch family or others, but they're kind of in the second generation or third. Getting to the 4th is hard, mostly because you don't wind up. The challenges of passing things down to another generation involve, having a family member or a generation that is A, interested, B, even remotely capable. I mean, just showing up and being, wanting to be involved. And then being united around certain tenets of who you are, what you do, what you stand for. I mean, our family has always had a lot of differences of opinion in politics, but I think everyone is unanimously. We always talk about the employees, and in my great-grandfather's will, he said, I hope that my children and my trustees recognize the debt we owe to the employees who have protected and built this business through thick and thin. And I hope they always have as congenial of a relationship with them as I always have. And so, when we're thinking about benefits or pension or retirement or, a place to have a career, it's usually the last thing we skimp on is sort of the employee experience. We always try to make it and that's something I think all family members have always been proud of. And in some family businesses, you might say, well, squeeze that down and pay out bigger dividends or something like that. And that's usually what breaks things up before they make it. But my family is a lot of differences, but very much united around the things that count, I think.
You want to talk about the differences or go on to some other stuff?
Well, all you have to do is show up at my house for Thanksgiving, and you'll get a good dose of it.
Yeah. So one of the other things that always comes up, in Atlanta, Cox had highly visible businesses for so long, the newspaper, WSB, TV, and radio. And one of the struggles I always have when I talk to people about Cox is letting them know, like, literally the HAC is just a teeny tiny part of the company. I probably shouldn't say that in this room, but anyway, explain Cox, how big it is and all the things that we're into and what.
If you take the AJC's sort of balance sheet and compare it, but if it takes up the amount of words that it consumes at our board meetings, it's a disproportionately everybody. Just as everybody's interested in politics and news and what's going on in the world, we're always talking about the AJC and love the concept of being involved in your hometown in ways that matter. And that's really why we are a company. My great-grandfather wanted to be a newspaper person. He got involved in all kinds of different things in his life, but he died writing an editorial. He was a newspaper man. That was his identity. His title was publisher. It wasn't CEO or chairman or any of those. He was just the publisher of the Dayton Daily News, and that was just how he knew himself. Even in my life, 50, 60, 70 years later, I identified with the company as a newspaper, TV, radio, media company. We were a media family. I didn't know a lot about it when I was a child, but you read in magazines and stuff, the media this, media that. But really today, those media roots have led into all kinds of other things: telecommunications, automotive, services, software, and more now sustainability is not only sort of a value, which is what it started as, but it's now a business line. And we're investing in businesses that help the world go around in a cleaner way. Disruptive technologies that'll do things like recycle trash, grow food, that kind of stuff and do it in a more sustainable way. So we're in all kinds of new things. We still identify. When you walk around my mother's house, you see pictures of a little girl pushing the button on the AJC's printing presses. So our identity and our history is very much a media history. The future, there are new media opportunities, but it's diversifying and growing in ways that I don't think my great-grandfather would have ever been able to guess, but I think he'd be proud of. I hope he's proud of.
And then just talk about the vital statistics of the company, number of employees, the revenues, that kind of thing. I know that some of this is a private company we don't necessarily reveal, but give people a sense of scale, the number of employees in Atlanta, that kind of thing.
It's approximately $20 billion in revenues. Somewhere we go up and down. Right now, staffing is a little low, but the employees base is about 50,000 full-time employees. Hopefully growing up and to the right. That's an important metric that we focus on. And we're getting into all kinds of new things that we're wildly excited about. So,
you have big growth plans for the company. I mean, you talked about, I just know from our conversations and employee meetings and stuff. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, so when I first came, we're broken up into media, automotive, telecommunications. Sorry, I see everybody over here also. But we have and I was working my way through the company in the different divisions. And my first job at corporate, which was at Cox Enterprises, was as I was in charge of strategy. So where are we going to be putting our money in the future? And for a global, mostly national, but we have some global interests also. What are we going to put our chips on in the future was a big question. And the way I approached it was by saying, well, if we were wildly successful, what would it look like? So let's think 20 years down the road. It's 2014 at the time when I was doing this, and I said, in 2034, what would be the big headlines that you'd read about in the newspaper that would make us proud about our accomplishments? And then how do we work backwards to that? But usually if you think, how do we put this into our budget, it's kind of incremental thinking. It's not really transformational. And we said we want our core businesses to grow. We want to get involved. We want to grow the pie, so we want those core businesses to get into new businesses. And then we also want the overall family, the enterprise, to start investing in things that we've never invested in before. Like today we're large investors in controlled environment agriculture because it's a sweet spot of sustainability, and it kind of gets us back to our roots in farming. The Dayton Daily News still owns the farm that my great-grandfather was born in, and we all identify as outdoors people and farmers. So how do you grow? How do you diversify? Was those three ideas. And then, I just did some rough math, and I said, if you started with an investment of $28,000 in 1898, and you had $20 billion in revenues, and you sort of normalized for all that, it'd be about a 12% growth rate compounded year over year. And that would be really hard to do with a company this size, but let's just say we were able to do half of that. 6.5% compounded growth rate. Starting where we are now for the next 20 years, that would give us some financial targets. We don't like to talk about the financial targets because we don't like our goals to be about money. But we do have numbers and metrics around what we're trying to accomplish. But it's really grow the existing businesses, diversify, and get into sustainability in a meaningful way. That's what I hope to accomplish in my time here.
So one of the things that I wanted to get you to talk about, because we've talked about it so much between news coverage and decisions about the company, is the pandemic. And your point of view on, pick your topic, masks, vaccinations, informing people about what's going on. You've made some big and hard decisions that I thought were great, but I'm not sure everyone did either.
So the two sort of critical moments, I remember when Harvard canceled the rest of their year in February or March of 20, and I remember thinking, now those are people that would probably have studied up on this issue and know what's coming. Everybody else was saying, are we going to close the office tomorrow and all this stuff. And so the decision to leave the office and operate remotely, and I'll never forget sitting with our some senior team members and saying, let's just do it. If we just chain locked the doors and you couldn't get into the office, what would happen? And I remember somebody who said, well, there'd be panic and the business would shut down. You wouldn't be able to send out, you wouldn't be able to get bills out, you wouldn't be able to function. And I was like, okay, well, that's not an option. But you just sort of keep talking about it and taking a step in the right direction. And I said, I don't think we have a choice. We can't, this thing is so contagious, we're gonna have to separate ourselves in some way. We can't get out on the street with tables. So we just decided to go ahead and do it. And it was total zero business interruption. I mean, there was almost no problem at all, other than people asking questions, what do I do about clocking in, or, how do I get my budgets approved and stuff like that. But it wound up not being an issue, and everybody had to adjust. I mean, watching 50,000 people change overnight was an amazing thing, but that was the big one. And then the really big one, even much bigger than that, was vaccine mandates for our corporate offices. And again, it was, we just don't have a choice. We can't have unvaccinated people in highly congested office space. Our headquarters here has 8,000 people. We have the same cafeteria, conference rooms, meetings. We would be violating our own guidelines for our employees if we didn't have people vaccinated before coming into the office. So, we just had to make that decision. And also, I just said, society will not get back to normal. And I know this has become a political issue, a religious issue, it's just tearing us apart, but we get the polio vaccine, we get mumps, rubella, we get all these other vaccines. This thing is wildly tested. The science has been around a long time. All the reasons not to do it are essentially on TikTok videos. But people aren't used to it yet, and there's going to be a debate, but we have to get vaccinated and we have to get back into the office. And so we made that decision, and that was much more controversial and difficult, but I still think it's the right thing to do.
I always like to ask people this, but favorite part of your job as the CEO of Cox?
I like, so I get a lot of stories every day. You know, people send me, you know, you should send an email to so-and-so, or just want you to know the person who led the recovery efforts in New Orleans after the Hurricane Ida or something like that. And you just get to see profiles of people that are just extraordinary human beings and go above and beyond their job, work hard, take care of people. They're just they're leaders. You know, in a world without leaders that inspire you, it's nice to work somewhere where you see leadership happening. And you get to, you know, I started an award a couple years ago called the James M Cox Award. And we award it to someone before every board meeting that has done something extraordinary since the last board meeting. And it's fun for me to recognize people and just to be in a position where I get to see things like that. I learn from it. My uncle Jim Kennedy created a similar award in honor of my grandmother after she passed away in January of 2020 called the Ancox Chambers Award, which recognizes people that do great things philanthropically or get involved in their community, mentoring people, making masks, you know, just cleaning up a river, doing all kinds of stuff. There's just people out there that do amazing things, and I love getting the opportunity to meet them and brag on them a little bit.
Okay. Anything I should ask you about the AJC, or is that dangerous territory?
We need to get to the real core of the issue. We got to go deeper. We got to go deeper.
Well, one of the things, and one of the reasons that we often talk about the AJC in news coverage is your passion for the city of Atlanta. I mean, you are a pretty fully engaged citizen. You consider it your hometown. So talk about what you think about Atlanta, what you're optimistic about, worried about, all of that.
I mean, I identify as an Atlantan. When I go to Montana and order a Coke and they bring you a Pepsi, I mean, I feel like leaving the restaurant. It makes me angry. The idea of flying on a commercial plane that's not a Delta plane, you know, just is abhorrent to me. I just identify with things Atlanta, and I always have, and it's just from a symptom of growing up here. And you know, I remember my house used to have woods all around it. It has houses everywhere now. It's just a much denser place, but it's grown and it's changed and it continues to. And you know, this past couple of years has been hard to watch because so has the whole nation. Our city has gotten more divided. There's all these code words for things and things that are tearing us apart. And I always think about it, Andy Young and you know, these great leaders of the past that talked about it as a city too busy to hate. And I just love my hometown, and I want us to get back to a more civil dialogue. I want us to be realistic about our problems, but solve them and be a great place to. I also don't want to forget that we are a great place to live. You know, crime is up, and there are big issues, but this is a great city, and people are flocking here in very big numbers, and they will continue to do that because it's a magical place in a lot of ways. I would choose to live here. Yeah. I do choose to live here.
I don't think we have too much more time, so if you've got a question, I forget how we do this. Of course, I know RK gets the first question always, but others of you have a question, I guess raise your hand and they'll bring the mics around, and we have a few minutes here. So,
can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I want to make a comment about Kevin Reilly. Please fix that. Last time, Kevin, I saw you wearing tie. Was at my daughter's wedding. Kashi's here, so look very nice wearing a tie. And Alex, that's a respect for you that he wore a tie today.
Good to know.
That's supposed to be funny, so please laugh. So Alex, there's a question for you. All over the world, the printed material is decreasing their circulation except India. And same thing happening in Atlanta at AJC. how you have been able to maintain quality. Forget about Kevin. How have you been able to maintain quality about AJC during these times? Please explain that to us. Thank you.
Well, our audience is larger than ever. Our ability to monetize the ads is the challenge there. So we reach more people now than we've ever reached. And so the responsibility of being accurate is higher than it's ever been. The challenge for all newspapers is print ads sold for a high CPM and digital ads sell for pennies on the dollar. So you're changing, we used to say changing dollars into dimes. We would actually love to change dollars into dimes because now it's dollars into pennies or even less than pennies. And it's a very hard model to make work. We are actually doing a really good job of growing our subscriber base now. It was going down for a long time, but because we had to start charging what it cost to deliver the paper, and get more of our revenue based on subscriptions rather than only advertisements. But to keep quality up, you just have to hire good reporters, and you have to have a threshold of them, and I rely on, it's no joke. I mean, we rely on Kevin's, editorial leadership to know we're going to have to cut on some things, but what is core? And it's always been, Kevin and the entire newspaper, community in our company is all about watchdog journalism and holding public leaders accountable. That's the point of it all. We love sports. If you dropped sports, you would have a serious problem. So you have to keep,
Especially this week.
Yeah, especially this week. But it's really holding public leaders accountable is the core, and then how much more can you do on top of that? Sports is a big one, business is a big one, sort of metro happenings is another big one. But you've seen, when I first started selling ads at the AJC in 2000, maybe 2001, I think it was the largest classified year ever, and it's classified ads in print started going down, and that was the big change for newspapers. We still have great advertisers and great ads. It's just the classified print revenue dropped a lot. So that's gone online. Actually, autotrader.com was invented at the AJC, which is a lot of people don't know that, but they were saying all of our auto ads are going online. How do we make sure we don't lose it? That's how Auto Connect, which became AutoTrader, was invented.
Alex, thanks for coming today. You'd alluded to some of the commitments you've made to sustainability, and you talked about how your great-grandfather wouldn't have seen how things have evolved, and so I know, and I think you've got a decent-sized team kind of committed to that strategic effort. Could you just talk a little bit about what you're investing in or what you're seeing as important to do there? Yeah, so in 2007, our chairman, Jim Kennedy, launched an initiative called Cox Conserves, and it was to become carbon neutral, water neutral, and zero waste to landfill. And I can't remember the original dates, but it was out a lot farther than it is now. It was in the 2040s type time frame. And we got to work on delivering newspapers. We used to drive 27,000 miles every day in the city of Atlanta, every morning between the hours of 5 and 7. So just imagine the carbon footprint of that. Imagine the carbon footprint of all those set-top boxes and cable TVs around the country running all the time. So our starting carbon footprint was somewhere in the 900,000 metric tons of carbon a year. It's now below 400,000, and that is through organic cuts. I mean, regulating our thermostats, using LED lights, using different types of fuel for trucks and whatnot. And then we're also investing in new businesses, like I mentioned, controlled environment agriculture. So we own a company called Bright Farms, which is the largest indoor grower of leafy greens like spinach, arugula, that kind of thing. So 90% of spinach is grown in Southern California and Pima County, Arizona. And so if you get it in Atlanta, there's a 90% chance it was grown outdoors there in a place that does not have a lot of water and has less and less in the future. It is sprayed with a lot of chemicals to keep the bugs off. It's then transported over the next couple of weeks to Chicago, St. Louis, sorted and distributed, and then you get it here and it's 2 weeks old. And if you ask your
whoever does the shopping, you look at the bottom of the little shell and see if it's wet and nasty and it's getting older and older by the day. Controlled environment allows you to grow it and have it be on the shelf of your local Whole Foods or Kroger the next day. And it has a lot longer shelf life. It has no chemicals. It's completely organic, and it cuts out that entire carbon footprint. If you add in the carbon benefit of those businesses that we've bought to our carbon footprint, we've eliminated our carbon footprint over 2x. And in the next 5 years, it'll be 40x. So if anyone has read Bill Gates's book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, it talks about how the world produces 210 gigatons of carbon every year, naturally. The world also processes 213 gigatons, that's 1 billion tons, naturally through the ocean, through trees, absorbing it. But then we humans add about 51 billion tons, and that's the number. He said, focus on 51 and 0. We're at 51, we got to get to 0. So I've started doing the math on the things we do, and I was very happy to come up with the number 1 over 332,000. So 1/332,000th. And I said, it looks like the smallest number in the world, but if our little business, our family business, can make that kind of a dent in the world's carbon footprint, then I think we can do this. I think the world can do this. I mean, imagine what that would look like if much larger companies did the same thing, or if China did the same thing, or India, or big polluters started really focusing on it. I don't think it's incomprehensible that we get to a zero net carbon footprint. And these are things that they weren't killers for us. And in fact, we're making money on Bright Farms and other things. We found a landfill in Beckley, West Virginia that allowed us to drill into the landfill. I've never been at a landfill before, but I enjoyed this one. And we mined methane out of it. We then pumped the methane into 2 gigantic Caterpillar generators that create electricity that goes into the grid. We get paid by the landfill for removing methane. We get paid by the grid for producing electricity. And that alone eliminated 66,000 tons of carbon from the atmosphere last year. And there's just nothing but pure joy in doing it. There's no drawback at all. But we should just be doing that in every landfill in America. There's just so many new opportunities out there. So it's something we're very excited about.
I think we are at the end of our time. Thank you both so much, Alex and Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you especially for both of you and the leadership you have in the city, and for your bold vision for the future, Alex. It's such an honor to have both of you here today.
Thank you. Thank you all for reading the newspaper. I strongly recommend it.
Thank you. Please join us next week for Secretary Raffensperger, and of course, don't forget to vote tomorrow. Thank you.